what I'm saying? So this is a 1970 American Airlines Astrojet comic.
Tom existed before the 70s.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Oh.
I was less than 6 months old when I flew and got this. We went to Florida too.
Did you see the world or just go to Sea World?
We went to Pensacola.
Ah.
We didn't go to Disney. I don't know. Did Disney World exist in 70?
Oh, no, it didn't. Disneyland just existed 5 years.
But we went to Florida, not California. I have never been to either.
But Florida's where they shot Flipper.
That's an odd thing.
That's what Florida is known for.
Yeah, it was. At the time, they had a bunch of sea parks. Not a Sea World. They had, like, oceanariums. That was the big thing in the 60s was oceanariums. And I know this is because I used to be super big into whales. When I was a kid, I was going to be like not a whale doctor. I was going to be a marine biologist because it's like, this would be so cool. Then I grew out of it. And this is like, guys, it's just another whale.
So Scott Johnson, podcaster at Frogpants Studios. Peter Wells, writer for the Sydney Morning Herald. Is that how you want to be introduced?
Yeah, may as well.
Perfect.
Lovely.
And host of Day 6.
Hung over. You gotta put that in.
We don't have to point that out, Scott.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how the rest of the team. I was with a bunch of journalists that I don't normally hang out with, and at about 1 in, I thought, wow, I need to go home, and so I just kind of wandered off, and they all freaked out that and thought I was dead. But yeah, I did make it back to the.
Is that called an Australian exit at that point?
Apparently, it's a smoke bomb. That's what someone said.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, and I thought, what was that? A drink that we had? That sounds really bad. But anyway, they continue to drink on for another 4 hours because they're professional journalists and they can do that.
Right. No, that's a fine journalistic tradition.
Indeed.
For sure.
Lots of cigarettes.
Well, let's get rolling here. You guys ready?
Yep.
Here we go.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, July 3rd, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. I emphasize daily, Scott, so people know that we do it every day.
Yeah, no, you need to. It's one of the defining characteristics of this fine technology program.
Although some pedants will point out that we don't do it on Saturday, but by golly, some weeks we do it on Sunday, thanks to Peter Wells, writer for the Sydney Morning Herald and host of Day 6 DTNS that comes out every other week. How you doing, Peter Wells?
I'm very, very well, Tom. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. You're in our continent, I hear.
I am, yeah. I'm on the wrong side of the planet. I'm in New York City for the Samsung Note launch, so that was fun. Yeah.
Well, we'll get a brief of what if you had to sum it up in a sentence. What is your impression of the Samsung Galaxy Note 7?
Really, really pretty. The coral one is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. I'm not convinced on the iris scan so far, but yeah, just a gorgeous looking phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nice gimmick.
Yeah, I found the thumbprint reader still is much faster than the iris. Like, you kind of have to deliberately look at it to unlock the phone, which just feels a bit wonky.
Do you think it's just a matter of time though before that iris scan stuff just comes into its own, and it's nice to see somebody making a first attempt on a consumer level like this?
Yeah, actually, if you do compare it to probably the first generation of those thumbprint readers that we had in phones, you know, they were a little bit kludgy as well. They were a little bit slow, and now they're just instant. So, yeah, it would be great to be able to, say, drive around and look at the phone and know that it would immediately open up.
Well, we are going to talk about some more news that has happened since that Tuesday unveiling. Starting today, customers can get the Windows 10 anniversary update if you want. Lyft has hit an all-time high of 13.9 million rides in July, according to a leaked investor letter. And now, Scott Johnson, here are some more top stories. Facebook is telling the world about its new 22,000 square foot lab in Menlo Park, California. They're like, hey guys, we have a lot of money, so we built a 22,000 square foot lab. It's not quite fully operational, but we want a bunch of journalists to come in and write about it, because guess what? We called it Area 404. Which would be funnier if they weren't showing it to everyone.
Yeah. Also, I just don't like the idea that it's 404. It's got too much. There's too much bad memories with that number on the internet.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
Your research is not found? I don't know. I don't know if that works. Anyway, the lab is actually very impressive. It does fast prototyping and modeling of hardware. It'll be used by Facebook's data center operations. It's building a Skunkworks team, the Facebook Connectivity Lab. Those are the folks working on drones that broadcast internet connections by lasers. They're going to be able to take advantage of this. Of course, Oculus VR will be taking advantage of it. The lab is full of cutting-edge machinery, milling machines, water jets, fabric cutters, metal folders, an electron microscope. It is Facebook taking on the mantle of IBM, Xerox PARC, and Bell Labs to me.
Not only that, I just had this conversation earlier today, funny enough, with a friend of mine, Mark. We were talking about Facebook and how they seem to not be a company that can be stopped. And despite what hipster internet friends might say about how much they dislike Facebook, they continue to, impress investors and break records, and we're almost to 2 billion people and all this stuff. And it occurred to me, part of the reason this is probably going well for them is stuff like this. This is a sign that they're interested in not just sitting around being a web company and providing a place for your grandma to visit and thinking that's just going to last forever. This is a company who's interested in seeing what else might be there, getting some of their smartest and brightest, and fast prototyping of hardware is certainly a part of that. So I applaud them. I think this is, if you're an investor in Facebook, this is one of the best signs you could get, is that they are, constantly cranking away.
It does look like Aperture Science more than 404, though.
Yeah.
You think it's secretly an intelligence test for Facebook employees?
I'm just saying those machines look terrifying in that really lovely clinical way.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I think that, this is clear that Facebook has made the right move in saying we are not going to just be that web social network company, like you said, Scott. On the other hand, that Facebook social network company is doing just fine. So Facebook being able to pour some money into research, a la what Google has done with its X Labs, is showing that, at least for now, Facebook's trajectory is still up and up.
I agree. Dropbox launched Android and iOS versions of Paper. Now, anybody who's listening to the show and remembers Waterworld, I might ask you, have you ever seen Paper? Anyway, it's collaborative document editing software is what Paper is, and the beta version of the service is now open to anyone, just even you and I. The apps let users see comments, reply, view notifications, and make small changes. The web version now has enhanced table features, improved photo galleries, and new notifications.
Yeah, so this is their take on Google Docs. They're saying, hey, you're storing all your docs in Dropbox. Why not just edit it there as well? Many enterprises are taking advantage of this. Apparently some design companies have been using it because it allows you to quickly do some note-taking and highlighting and things like that, and that's what this is all about. These apps certainly don't let you do full editing, but they are going to be handy for people who have already been using Dropbox Paper. I still, unfortunately, don't see the benefit in it. Dropbox integrates with Office 365, so I get full editing from them, and other documents that I have are in Google Docs, and I get the whole Google Docs editing experience. Peter, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. I mean, I use Google Docs for anything outside of work, and for work I use Office 365. We've got an account. So I did try out the Dropbox app when it first, the Dropbox service when it first launched as a beta, and it's good, it's polished, but like I said, I just can't find a reason to use it.
Well, the other thing I would worry about a little bit, and I don't like to normally point to past discretions from companies and say, well, there's a reason not to trust anything they do in the future, and I'm actually a giant fan of Dropbox, but they tried to do something like this with Carousel and image management, and they were real gung-ho on that for a while and then just dropped it like a hot rock. And I don't necessarily blame them. That's a very competitive space with big players in it that pretty much ate their lunch, and there was really no reason to keep developing it or throwing money at it. This feels kind of like that to me, trying to sort of, I don't know, take on the way we use collaborative doc sharing is a risky piece of business, and I would more worry about the long-term viability.
But I would say that most users of Dropbox use it for documents rather than photos anyway, so it makes more sense for them to at least go after the market that most people use for. But like you say, Tom, it's got the Office 365 integration already, so again, I just don't really see the need for it.
And my majority use of Dropbox, and I think the reason that I like using Dropbox is because it integrates so nicely with the file system on Windows and OS 10 and Linux. So no matter where I am, I just see the files as files, but they sync across the platforms. That's what I want it for. That's what I'm willing to pay. What Dropbox is desperately trying to do is not be tied down to just that, because they don't think they can make enough money off of it. And so they come up with these other efforts to lure me in, and I'm like, I don't really need collaborative editing from Dropbox. If I'm on my desktop, I have word processors and things to edit with, and I can share the links with other people. So they haven't yet struck me with one, and I think it's a fair comment to say I don't know that I would try to go all in on a service like this if I was worried that Dropbox isn't going to continue to use it.
Their smartest move, in my opinion, has been integration so well with other apps and other products. So other products have been able to tie into the API and use that stuff. I use notational velocity quite a bit on the desktop, and I sync that with OneWriter on my phone, and it's nearly a perfect marriage, and only a perfect marriage because Dropbox exists. So I want them never to leave my life. I just don't know that me collaborating on actual editing of the documents through Dropbox is anything I even need.
I was actually going to say that that's what I would love them to make instead, a competitor to Simple Note or Evernote, because that's kind of what I need. Just simple notes that maybe have a bit of text, maybe have a bit of links and pictures, but yeah, just something really, really simple as a note-taking thing that I can have on all my devices.
Speaking at the B-Side Security Conference in Las Vegas, FTC Chief Technologist Lori Craner talked about how she changed the FTC's recommendations to change passwords often. If you're one of those people who don't like the fact that you're required to change your password every 60 or 90 days, or you're an IT pro who's like, this is not doing anything, it's just a hassle, she is on your side. She convinced the CIO and the CISO of the FTC to drop the policy by showing them studies that show that it turns out people choose weaker passwords when they're forced to change them regularly. A 2010 study from North Carolina Chapel Hill showed that if people change passwords every 90 days, they use a transformation pattern that can easily be predicted by an algorithm, and even with hashed passwords was susceptible to cracking because they were using shorter passwords in some cases. A study from Carleton University showed that frequent passwords hamper attackers only minimally. They just did a mathematical analysis and said, yeah, it doesn't really do much, and it's not even much of a speed bump. And Ars Technica's Dan Gooden points out that both the National Institute of Standards in the United States and the UK CESG have concluded that mandated password changes are ineffective or even counterproductive. So the evidence is against you if you're pushing for a policy asking people to change passwords frequently. It has minimal to zero effect, and in some cases can make the passwords easier to crack because people change the way they construct their passwords if they know they're going to have to change it regularly.
Is it more of a frequency problem? Like every 3 months seems excessive, and I agree with the findings of this, but maybe once every year doesn't seem too crazy? Or
once every year reduces the effectiveness, the minimal effectiveness, even more.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're just hassling people for no good return.
So what's the answer? Like Peter, I'd almost say we need better corporate level security services that work like 1Password, but on something that's a little bit more enterprise related, so that people have to worry about this anymore. IT can just change their crazy hashed up looking weird passwords every 3 months and make sure that the users get in and get out.
Yeah, I've argued for an enterprise license for LastPass at the company that I work at. I totally see this all the time. I could probably guess most people's passwords by finding out the name of their child and then adding a number based on when they started. So many people's passwords is just their child's name and then one for the very first time they use it, and then they just add a number based every 6 months we get them to change their password. So you can almost cut a password in half and look at the rings and see exactly when someone started. So it's a little bit of a shame. I do wish we had some kind of LastPass service, but yeah, I mean, I think the new laptops with fingerprint readers and Microsoft Hello are probably making this a little bit easier. Hopefully we can get to a point where people can have that crazy password and never know it exists, and then just use their thumbprint or iris scan or whatever to get into their computer.
Two-factor authentication. I mean, that's what Google does. My wife has to choose a strong password, and she has to use a YubiKey if she needs to authenticate. And that That is not the only thing that happens, but that is the main protection. Not making people forget their passwords and changing passwords and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have two-factor authentication on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything that I can, except my work Exchange, because we don't support it.
Now, I know several of you are going to write in and say, let me explain why you need to change a password, because a database leaks. And if you change your password regularly, that's an automatic prevention from that database that is leaked out there 4 years later being a problem for you. And that's a fair response to that. Most of the studies have found that case is so rare that it's not worth the hassle of getting people to create less secure passwords in the first place.
Right. It's a value proposition that isn't exactly valuable on the other end.
Yeah.
The first 13 years, this is my favorite story of the day, by the way, I spent an inordinate amount of time before my morning show this morning when I should have been prepping the morning show. I was looking at this, so thanks, Internet. Anyway, the first 13 years of the iconic gaming periodical Nintendo Power is now available on archive.org. Not only that, you can click on an issue and you just click a page and it turns, like actually animates a turn. They're super vintage, super rad. I used to have all these. I don't have them anymore. It's really cool. The collection dates back as far as July 1998, or excuse me, 88. That's the very first issue. You may remember it was like this little claymation-looking Mario thing. This goes all the way up through June 2001, covering a range of Nintendo products from Mario 2 through the Game Boy Advance. The issues are available as PDFs, EPUB, Kindle, and text files for those who hate fun. By the way, you can also just straight up look at them on the page, and they work great. So it's awesome. I spent way too much time looking at these today.
Archive.org, man. Archive.org has tons of stuff like this. They preserve old games. They preserve old magazines. This is just the latest. And it seems like the Internet's short-term memory is shown every time Archive comes up with a new collection because everyone discovers Archive.org suddenly.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm definitely going to have to download these before I buy that tiny little NES player that's coming out.
I know.
Yeah, because you'll need to get the tips again.
Yeah.
It's perfect timing for that thing. And not only, I don't know what Nintendo's stance is on this sort of archival stuff. They've often been real weird about Let's Plays on YouTube and things like that. So I still have this question about whether Nintendo thinks it's cool for all of these old publications to be there. At some point during the lifespan of that magazine, it was spun out to another company who just ran it for them.
It was Future Media ran it here in the United States, down in the Bay Area.
Right. So I just wonder if there's any rights concerns with them. I really hope not.
Archive is the library of the Internet. So if they don't have a fair use right to something, they go and they secure the right to say, hey, we're a nonprofit, we're gonna do this and produce it. So if they're showing this, they have secured the rights to it.
Yeah, and you can be reminded on a pretty regular issue basis just how bad some of the ads were for games in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a rough period. It's all there for you, though.
Yeah, go take a look. Enjoy. MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, the CSAIL. You'll see a CSAIL sometimes put there. A PhD student at the MIT CSAIL, Abe Davis, is publishing work this month demonstrating a technique for simulating the way objects respond to various forces called interactive dynamic video. And no, smarty, it's not using 3D models. You're like, oh, that happens in my video game. No 3D models. You can do this kind of modeling with only 5 seconds of video. All you need is video captured with a standard camera with enough movement of the object that you want to interact with so that its algorithm can analyze the vibrations of the movement of that object and predict how objects will move in new situations. One demonstration they showed was a picture of a bush that was just kind of, fluttering in the breeze, and after it was analyzed, you could reach in with your mouse, grab it, and it was like you were grabbing the bush. It would act like the bush if you had actually grabbed it. Another one they did, of course, pandering to the crowd, showed Pokemon characters bouncing off of objects. There was like a rubber slide out on a playground, and they were able to just bounce the Pokemons off, and the slide would bounce up and down. Practical applications would include structural design, so if you're designing a bridge or something. Special effects in movies would be made easier by this, and of course, augmented reality.
Yeah, let's be honest. The big moneymaker is going to be whatever the next Pokemon Go killer is, and the fact that they take that stuff just a little bit further. I'm not surprised at all they used Pokemon as a way to demonstrate this stuff. The only thing that surprises me about this particular bit of tech news and this technology in general and AR in general is that we've had it since like iPhone 4, Galaxy S1 or 2 or whatever, because we've had the ability to do augmented reality experiences with devices portably. and it's taken until 2016 for something finally to be killer app status so that now everyone's talking about it. It's easy to get cynical about that, but man, I'm so excited for whatever's next.
I think this is fantastic, and I think it's easy to underestimate the importance of this when we're so used to these graphical effects that happens in movies or even our own video games. We're like, oh, look at the water effect. How is this that much different? It's way different because of the amount of work that doesn't need to go into it. The fact that you can just do like a few seconds of a plant's leaves fluttering, and then suddenly your virtual hand can like swipe through the leaves and they'll move the way the leaves could. I think it's fantastic, and obviously has practical applications in structural dynamics. My father-in-law is a CAD designer, so this kind of thing could be incredibly helpful for him to see how materials are going to interact in the real world.
Yeah, it's almost putting a graphical user interface on top of what is normally a coding part of computering.
Yeah, it's also could be. I mean, what they're basically achieving with a very small layer of processing power is something that used to take a lot of work. I'm thinking about film applications here, like the ability to do motion, capture of high motion or action in a film that's not going to require the same amount of sensors on the guy or the same amount of green screen work or whatever post-production you've got to put into it. This starts to make you think about a lot of applications outside of that Pokemon made those leaves move.
Like, imagine how revolutionary ray tracing was. If anybody knows what ray tracing is, it was a way to just say, I want light to bounce off that object there. And you didn't have to code all of the light. You would just tell it where the source was and what object you had and how reflective it was, and suddenly you could make graphics that looked like they were in standard light. This is sort of the modern day equivalent of that, where you're like, hey, instead of programming all of this physics, we can make it happen with only 5 seconds of video of a real object.
Yeah, in a weird way, this is like the great-great-great-grandson of ray tracing.
Yeah, and you don't have to create the plant, right?
Right.
You can use a picture of a real plant. So it's practical effects meets digital effects, aka augmented reality.
There you go. TechCrunch passed along a story from I'm going to say this right, Xunhua. Yeah. Because I put it in there phonetically for those wondering at home. News about a test of an elevated bus.
Then you ruin it. You could have just didn't think that you had like nailed it, but you had to point it out.
Full disclosure. That's what I'm all about. News about a test of an elevated bus that travels over traffic in a port city 200 miles east of Beijing. Everyone kind of thought this was the craziest, and some would say dumbest idea ever. Oh my gosh, they made it a reality. The transit elevated bus tested braking and power consumption in a brief test. The electrical-powered bus is 72 feet long, 25 feet wide, and straddles multiple lanes of traffic. It is scary as hell. It can carry up to 300 passengers and travel up to 40 miles per hour, and the idea is nobody else on the road in normal cars is being affected. They are just driving underneath this essentially moving bridge in a lot of ways, and it's something to behold. Obviously, you're not going to be able to use this in places where road widths vary. It's not like this thing shrinks for a more narrow passage than it does a larger one. But in a city or cities that are just being developed, especially in China, rural China, where you've got a big space and a long way to go, this could change commuting in a pretty interesting way. I just want to be one of those little commuter car people that are underneath that thing. Just once.
I want to know how they orchestrate turns. That's the biggest thing for me, because if you're under that thing when it's time to turn, obviously it can't block your turn, or you're not going to be able to turn right, turn left. How does it turn right and left if it has cars underneath it? There's some logistics to work out there.
Yeah, there's a bridge in Melbourne that gets hit by a truck at least once a month. It's become famous now. It's got its own Twitter account. But what happens there? I guess they've factored that in. But yeah, when I first saw this story, I totally thought it was an April Fool's. So to see it rolling out and being tested is amazing.
Yeah, super cool. I listen. I want to drive that. It's all electrical. Is it also? We don't know if it's autonomous. We don't know if there's some dude behind.
No, I think it's driven by a person. Yeah, I guess it could be autonomous if they wanted it to. That's neither here nor there.
That is some power, dude. You behind the wheel like that with a big multi-lane bridge car.
Yeah, it does have tracks need to be built in the road, so it can't just drive on any road. That's part of it. Not railroad tracks, but like a divot that kind of guides it. Make sure that it doesn't swerve around and hit the cars driving underneath it. Hey, thanks to everybody who submitted stories in our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. The lazy one was in there today. SP Sheridan, Kyle, who's our self-titled janitor, cleans up the spam. Skyboard13, Strike It Rich 1, Philip Shane, Howl2Z, KV87, and AU Tiger Fan, plus many, many others. Be one of them, even just by voting at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Those are our top stories. Now, YouTube, which my wife works for, has a kids app that was for free, but it had some advertising in it. And now you can get rid of at least the pre-roll advertising. YouTube video creators can put advertisements in their actual YouTube videos, and YouTube can't do much about that. But those pre-rolls can go away because it is now bundled in with the YouTube Red program in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. That means if you're a YouTube Kids user, you can upgrade to Red. It's $10 a month here in the US, and remove ads from your kids' videos. You also get Red's ability to save videos for offline viewing. Real quickly before we get to where this is leading us, does this make it more or less or in no way change your attractiveness to this, Peter?
I love YouTube Red, except for the fact that, I don't know, I find YouTube's, Google Play Music not that great, at least in terms of, I love the fact that you can upload your entire library. I don't find it easy to find new stuff. I don't.
Now,
like
see, that's where you and I differ, because my wife, who works for YouTube, agrees with you.
Yeah.
She isn't able to find music on there, but I like it because I'm not really looking for that much new music. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't like the kind of cartoony interface at the top there, where first you have to choose kind of Thursday morning, and then do you feel energetic, and all of that I find kind of annoying. So I've actually just switched back to Apple Music of all things, but that I'm using on an Android phone. But I don't know. I spoke to someone yesterday who just said, how can YouTube have this product that is just so good on so many levels and no one uses it? They're just marketing it terribly. So I mean, this does make it a little bit more compelling for me, for sure. We do play some YouTube clips to our 11-month-old, so she does. It's crazy how much she gets involved in it. So we only give her like a minute or so of some cartoon and then move on. But yeah, it does make it very compelling. Scott, what do you think?
Well, I've got a friend. This is a bit of an anecdote, and again, I have no confirmation on this. He's only told me this, but I have a friend who knows someone who works at RedTube, and claims,
that's different.
speaking to your whole marketing thing, claims that they have seen an uptick in users since YouTube Red launched because there's some market confusion and people.
You should have formed my question more narrowly, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. That being said, I am not a YouTube Red user. I haven't yet felt like there's been a compelling enough reason for me. I don't mind ads so much unless I'm doing show stuff, and in those cases I block for shows. But I would, the idea of $10 a month is probably something I just need to hunker down and do. But I'm just not feeling all that compelled by YouTube Music or by some of the other offerings that are tied to it. As far as this as a product for kids, it makes perfect sense to me. If you're already doing Red, you've got the subscription, there's no reason not to do this. My kids have all grown out of that stage, so I don't think any of them would be interested in YouTube Kids as a service regardless. My youngest is 16 now, so that has less effect on me. But I'm going to agree with you, Peter. I think the Red name as a brand for YouTube is bad. They just have done a bad job of making it so that people understand what it is. I can talk to kids who love YouTube and are there every day and live on that service, and they don't know what I'm talking about when I mention YouTube Red. They don't even know what it means.
Now, that said, it sounds like both of you are of the opinion like maybe not worth spending $10 a month to get rid of the ads, and we'll leave aside whether the other things that are part of YouTube Red would change that. But what about the idea of a kids app for YouTube? What about the idea of your kids watching videos on a tablet or interacting with a tablet at all? We touched on this a tiny bit last week when Megan Maroney was on the show with Scott. But Peter, you've got an 11-month-old, and that is old enough for them to start to want to mess around with your tablet. Are you going to let them do that?
I don't know, and so I did actually write a story about this last week, talking to a couple of people who have done a bit of research on children and tablet use. And I mean, I started from that. I actually tracked down this person because I started reading up on tablets and kids, and it all sounded terrifying. Like, it really sounded like, I spoke to my sister who has a 4-year-old, and she kind of refuses to let her kid anywhere near a tablet because she kind of says it's almost an addictive drug to her little kid, that she has to fight to take it back off her, and it becomes a big drama. So she just straight out doesn't allow tablets in the house, and it's hard for me because at last count I had 12 smartphones in my house. We get a lot of review units coming through, and there's tech everywhere. I think there's like 4 tablets. We actually haven't shown our 11-month-old a tablet yet, so I've tried to. I only use my iPad in bed, but when we have played YouTube, it's been on the TV at very small bursts. Roger, you've got a small kid. Can you give me some tips?
So, can you hear me? Just making sure.
Yeah, we're going to bring in our producer, Roger Chang, who also has a... How old is your daughter?
16 months.
16 months, yeah.
So over a year and a half, I think, right? 16 months? Yeah. So one of the things to the YouTube thing, I would actually use it because it's weird. On long trips, my kid is generally fine for the first hour in the car. It's the last hour that is like uncontrollable, and the only thing that puts her at ease is a video that she's accustomed to. So I would use that because I literally have a bunch of videos on my tablet that I use to kind of pacify her, for lack of a better term. But in terms of a tablet, I actually have a tablet. I have the one that Tom lent me, and I don't let her actually play. I let her play with it physically, but I have it on the lock screen, so she can't really do anything. And I make sure that whatever she does, I'm in control. The thing I really try to maintain is that I, as a parent, have control over access and what she does on it. And so she can touch it and she can make the screen turn on, but that's it. Because, as you said, as alluding to your friend, like if I take it away from her, she'll go up the walls. But that being 16 months, I can give her something else within a short amount of time. In about 2 minutes, she's back to normal. But my worries are more about physiological. I don't want her to get used to looking at something at close range for extended periods of time. I would like her to be able to focus at varying focal lengths distances, so just from a distance as well as something up close. That's the same reason why when I do use my phone, I use it in short bursts when I'm around her. Just like, oh, did someone leave me a message? Did I get a Facebook post or something? Other than that, I very rarely use it around her because I know it attracts her attention because she sees, hey, mommy and daddy use it. Why can't I play with it? And so I'm trying to set, for lack of a better term, an example, so she doesn't get too caught up on it, because I do want her to concentrate on more traditional motor skills, including writing, which is something I think, it's not that I think touchscreens are bad, it's just that I would like her, for example, to be able to read an analog clock before she can read a digital clock, if that makes sense.
My 11-month-old took her first selfie at 9 months, by the way. So.
Oh, they love doing that.
In your article, Peter, the expert that you talked to recommended that the screen usage isn't bad, and of course she wasn't talking about the visual part of it like Roger's talking about. The studies show that when you're outside and you can look farther, you reduce the chances of myopia. So that is something to consider. But just the use of the screen, if you're engaging with your child, that has better effects, right?
Yeah. So basically, an iPad, just like a television, is not a babysitter for your child. And don't get me wrong, I can totally understand using it in that case in long car trips, or if you just need to do something, get the dishes done. There's nothing wrong with kind of allowing a kid to kind of watch Peppa Pig for 20 minutes. But yeah, it was more the idea that if you put her study. When I chatted to her about it, she said, look, basically if you're giving a kid an iPad and then having them just stare at the screen and watch hours of cartoons, then yeah, that's a pretty terrible use of the technology. But if you're engaging with the kid, playing games and even going outside of the games, using anything that's kind of interactive and uses real world things. So some of the games she talked about, were slightly augmented reality type games where you take a photo of your mum and then you could dress her up in certain ways and that kind of stuff. Anything that kind of brought the real world into the tablet and then kind of brought out a real world activity out of it. So you kind of had a natural in point and out point, were the games that she found, or even the activities that she found to be most beneficial. And the way she said it was with the parents that she spoke to, who kind of had that kind of engagement with their children. That actually kind of wore out the kids anyway. When you're doing a lot of creative work, you kind of do, you're using so much of your brain that kids naturally kind of get tired after a 20-30 minute session like that, and would then want to move on to other things. So she still wouldn't say exactly when I should introduce. She wouldn't give me an age, a simple yes or no kind of start at 3 years old or start at 4 years old. And that's what I was desperate for. But she said every kid is different.
Yeah.
It's weird, and that it's one of the maddening things about, especially when you're a new parent like us, except for Scott, is trying to figure out when that time is. And I think you will instinctively know, seeing how your child reacts with the technology. And I mean, finding a natural in and out point. Like, one of the things I can't wait to do is when Ellie's old enough to be able to use the Constellation app. So I can then point out, like, hey, this is blah, blah, blah. This is Orion's belt. Now, if you see up here, it's right here. Like, stuff like that where you can kind of integrate it into an everyday, not everyday, but like in a real world scenario like you were talking about. Like, hey, we're going on a car trip. We're going to go to Yellowstone. Look at a map. This is the route we're taking. These are the things we can see. Hey, would you like to stop somewhere? Somewhere where you're able to use it, but they're not lost in it. If I guess is a good phrase, because if they get lost in it, then they start closing out the world immediately outside them, especially their parents, which is what you don't want. But you do definitely want to integrate it in a way that positively impacts, makes it a lot more interesting, but not necessarily takes over their interaction with you or other people or other kids.
I would add one tiny little layer to this. Something we've tried to do at every stage of technology since my kids were born until today, and we've seen a lot of changes in that. My first daughter was born in 1994, basically the year we got the web. My youngest son was born in 2000. He's 16 now, and he has seen the advent of these tablets and touch devices and saw that happen kind of in his childhood. One thing we've always tried to do, whether it was computers, PCs, tablets, phones, all steps of the way, was try to think of as many use cases as possible where something creative is being done. They're making something rather than just consuming something. So sitting him in front of a tablet and having him watch a bunch of cartoons in a row has its place occasionally, but we would often say, well, no, here's a stylus, so draw. And you can obviously do this with paper and stuff, but also there's some cool animation apps. There's a lot of stuff within that ecosystem where they can creatively challenge their minds, make stuff, not just consume stuff. And that seems to make a big difference. I have a daughter who's, getting ready to go to college and study, animation and video game design. I've got a son who does 3D modeling now. Primarily, it's the only thing he does on his computer. And that kind of stuff seems to have worked out really well because early on we said, all right, the focus is what can you do and make with this, not so much what can you watch and get with this.
Yeah. The key is not to be passive. You mentioned this in your article, Peter. There's an old rule of 2 and 2. Nobody under 2 years old and not more than 2 hours at a time, but that was developed around passivity. So you have to adapt that, and I guess that's why she can't give you a particular age, because it kind of depends on the child. If they're ready to engage and you can get them to start doing and making something, that might be the right time to let them interact with it on a limited basis.
Yeah, and Scott, last week you mentioned being able to see, on a family plan, being able to see the apps that your kids were kind of playing around with. I know one friend, I didn't get time to fit this in the article, but one friend that I spoke to said that he uses the family sharing stuff on iPad to control the kid's device to a certain extent. So it turns itself off at a certain time, and he just says, he's got a 4-year-old, and he said that he just tells the 4-year-old that that's how iPads work. They can only work for a certain amount of time, and then they just switch themselves off. And the kid's fine with that. And
for now.
For now, yeah.
Daddy was lying.
Well, you mess up your kids no matter what.
Santa Claus, I know.
Yeah, you just have to accept that bit. But yeah, so I mean, there are little tricks I guess you can do that way as well. I thought it was also interesting that that Lisa, who the person I spoke to, mentioned that some of the most kind of educational apps were actually some of the worst because they were just so boring. They were so badly made, and the App Store is just full of trash, as we know. So make sure that there are some links at the bottom of the story of some of the better names of, but first of all, just companies that you know are doing good work. So Tokaboka was one of the companies that makes fantastic apps. And just kind of getting onto some of the websites that are designed for parents to tell you how good some of the apps in the App Store are, because some of them are very, very boring and clearly thrown together just to make a couple of bucks, unfortunately.
Thought it was interesting that she recommended GarageBand and iMovie. I mean, that makes perfect sense when you think about it, but I would have never thought about it.
Music is something that kids run to like candy. Like, I don't know what it is, if it's just because, when they come out, they're more attuned to sound, but, like, Ellie just loves music. And even if it's music on an elevator, she'll start moving to it, which is the oddest thing. But, like, being able to just visualize and then create music, in many ways, I think, is a much more advanced step than, say, like putting them in front of a keyboard. Because my parents have a piano. My parents put her in front of the piano to play, which she can't. She just pounds the keys. But she likes the noise. But being able to kind of interact with that, especially a tablet, it makes it easier for them to associate certain actions with responses. So, hey, if I put so and so note here or tune here, it makes sounds like this. And they can slowly build up, which will be interesting. I think down the road you'll see a big shift in the way music is produced as less people are bound to traditional, sheet music and more accustomed to, hey, this is how I did in GarageBand. This is how I read or understand music.
GarageBand made the music this way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's odd odd thing to think about, but I've, ever since I took music lessons, everything has been sheet music. You learn through sheet music. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, is the Suzuki method, which was rote learning by to the nth, power. You just learn it until you learn it. So you play the same piece over and over again until you can do a recital blindfolded, in front of 1,000 people perfectly. And that was kind of the way in my generation you were taught how to play. But being able to understand and creatively use things like that is music now with tablet and technologies, I think is going to be a huge plus moving forward, especially for creativity, because you're now no longer bound by cost or if something is just like impossibly huge, like a piano, to get into your house.
And as soon as Penny can walk, I'm going to make a Michael Bay style action film around her. So I can't wait to do that.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. That sounds amazing. I'll help you let us take a peek.
I have something very similar in mind. I'm going to get her my kid in a Godzilla suit, and then take all the Amazon boxes that we get all her stuff in, and just build a fake city, and then she can just tear through it.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see that too. We'll have a film fest of the children of DTNS co-hosts. And that brings us to the end of this DTNS, unfortunately. Thank you, Peter Wells, for joining us at a respectable hour, at least local time for you, since you're in New York. Let folks know where they can find more of you, not only here at Daily Tech News Show on day 6, but elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. I will be recording a special Day 6, probably in the air. I'll be flying back with a couple of journalists, and I'm going to bring this little microphone on board, and we'll have our first Mile High DTNS.
Fantastic.
So that'll be fun. But I'll do that sometime this week. But yeah, follow me on Peter Wells on Twitter. That's the main place I share things, so follow me there.
Excellent. Scott Johnson, of course, always with us on Wednesdays. What do you got going on?
There's always a million things, but I'll tell you what, this week, yesterday, in fact, we launched the inaugural episode of a brand new show called Rally Point. When I say we, I mean the folks at Turner Broadcasting and Bleacher Report. It is a show dedicated to esports and competitive gaming, hosted by me, Brian, and Seven. It is twice weekly and shows up right there at Bleacher Report. You can go to bleacherreport.com/rally-point-podcast. Very optimized for search engines, I suppose. But anyway, the first episode's up there. It's on iTunes. We're way up in the ranks, which we're feeling really good about. You can get it anywhere, Google Play, wherever you want it. Available now, so check that out. That's the Rally Point Podcast.
And thanks to our producer, Roger Chang, for jumping in on this. Anything you want to let folks know about before we go?
Keep supporting DTNS. We really appreciate it. It's awesome. Helps keep my kid fed and in clothes and in diapers that aren't soiled.
Yeah, it's allowing him to pay for the electricity that charges the tablet that keeps Ellie entertained on the long car rides. So
yes,
we appreciate your support. Patreon.com/DTNS is the place to go to find some perks and tips if you want to support the show that way. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. Show's live Monday through Friday if you want to watch us at diamondclub.tv and alphageekradio.com. Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Justin Robert Young is with us tomorrow. We've missed him. We'll talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great fun. Thanks so much. And Roger, thank you for jumping in, man.
Yeah, no worries. It's hopefully. Wait, when do you fly out of New York? At the end of the week?
Tomorrow evening. I fly out Thursday. I return Saturday morning. That's how long it takes.
Wow. Is that what a 18-hour flight?
It's whatever it is from New York to LA, and then 14 hours from LA.
So almost 20 hours.
What's your layover in LA?
I don't even know. I haven't been. I don't want to check, but yeah, I should check. I think it is the Qantas ones tend to line up pretty quickly, so
okay.
You just have time to kind of get spat out of LA.
Well, if you get if your layover's hours and hours long, let me know. I'd swing over and grab a drink or something.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be cool. Yeah, I'll check it. Apparently, I'm going to a Yankees versus Mets game. I was going to ask you guys, which team should I be going to? Going for?
That is a political question, definitely. The Yankees are the more historic team in New York. You'll find more Yankees fans, but the Mets are more of the underdog. So kind of have to pick your flavor there.
Do you like John Stewart? Do you like John Stewart at all?
I do, yes.
And then you want to go Mets. He's a big Mets fan.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the Yankees aren't necessarily liked by everyone else. Is that correct?
The Yankees, because they've won many, many World Series, are often viewed with disdain by non-Yankees fans. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So they're the whole.
They're like Manchester United of U.S. baseball.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know if the Sydney Swans are in a kind of.
No. We were pathetic for so long that everyone kind of likes us.
Okay, so the Swans are more like the Cubs then. Got it.
Yeah. Anyway,
you see the Yankees suck chants happening in our chat room already.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
No worries.
Thanks so much. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really good fun. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Titles.
I'm very uQuiet.
It's and I'm guilty of this as anyone else. You sometimes do what's the most expedient. Like like when she's screaming and crying and her face is turning red, it's like, all right, I'll give it to you. But I definitely want to try to avoid that situation.
Sure.
But it is a funny title. I will say it is a funny title. 404, your research is not found. Ha! You shall not password. Have you seen Paper? I believe that iPads are our future.
I knew the water world would get you laughing, Scott.
That's the only way it works. You have to remember the scene. With
It's
saying, "You ever seen Paper?" And if you haven't, then it's dumb. But I love it.
I believe that iPads are our future.
Won't someone please think of children with tablets? Parenting 101.
I'm going to go with iParent, uQuiet.
Yes.
It's really runaway winner. We all chuckled at it.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's technology can really be helpful and as an outlet for kids to be creative because you can do so many things and you're not bound by physical how big your house is and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, like my kids are well beyond me when I was their age and maybe even beyond where I am now. Like my daughter is creating things that make me go, oh my gosh, I'm getting behind.
Have you when they started with I'm assuming they started with Windows or OS 10?
Yeah, a little of both. Depends on which kid, but yeah, basic computer stuff.
I'm gonna see if she will, when she gets to the age that she'll take to like command line, like just to give her an underlying knowledge of the technology. In the same way, like I try to tell my sister and Jen, like this is why you check the oil in the car. This is why like basic things.
Well,
So they're not.
what did really good for Nick in that regard, funny enough, was I guess he started playing it in 2010, so he was 10 years old. But basically 6 years of messing around with Minecraft and doing some scripting in there, because that requires some command line business to get like mods working the way you want.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, he walked away with not only a knowledge of that, but I think a better appreciation for kind of underlying systems and things. It was cool.
And one of the things that I see people thinking or saying or using as a premise is like, oh yeah, so Minecraft makes kids into coders. And the thing is, it's not exactly that, in my opinion. What it is Minecraft is something that gets kids interested in a thing to find out if they're interested in that other thing that it's associated with. So not every kid that plays Minecraft is going to get into coding. Not every kid that plays Minecraft likes to play around with those mods. Right. But a kid who might not have ever come across coding as early in life as Nick did because of Minecraft. So it's exposing kids to things in a way that they might not have allowed themselves to be exposed to otherwise. And I think that's the genius of it. It's like giving your kids a tablet won't make them into musicians or artists, but it might allow them to explore that side of themselves earlier than they would have otherwise.
Yeah, my dad bringing home an Apple II when I was in junior high or whatever, and me learning BASIC so I could make my own Starfield simulation.
Oh, I remember that.
That's like the impetus for a lifetime of tech appreciation and creativity.
And that's a really good point, is that didn't turn you into a coder, right? You're not a developer now because of that, but it allowed you to discover something that you loved about it.
Absolutely, but it also gave me anyway, like this basic understanding of what variables are and how kind of the math works, and so I can appreciate it more as someone who didn't completely pursue computer science and found that extreme sort of boring. But it still all springs eternal into this kind of creative space I'm in. Like all of this stuff is like partially due, at least partially due to that computer coming in the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a big believer in it.
Being able to tinker is an amazing experience. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like being able to fix a spring clock or opening up like an old radio to see why it doesn't work. It was, even if you didn't fix it, you gain a better appreciation of, okay, for example, I had an old Milton Bradley video game that was Space Invaders, and after a while the button stopped working. I took it apart to figure out why, and I saw that the trace that led from the button to the actual microcontroller, there was this big black oil stain on it. So someone either drank something or spilled something on it, but it literally, knocked out the trace. I couldn't fix it because I was 12 and I had a screwdriver and maybe a couple of paper towels to my name, but I understood why it didn't work. I had to. It's like I could plainly see and understand that. Hey, look, this little gold thing that goes up from here is cut off and it doesn't work. Later as I got older and I got a little more into electronics, I understood what traces were. Wires, how you could wire. I could have potentially just bridge it with a piece of wire if I had a soldering iron and a lot of time on my hands. But like things like that I think is great. Just being able to play with stuff and to figure things out, even if it is not working at the end of it.
Yeah, totally.
I think MS-DOS gaming was like crucial. Remember, you had to write your own batch scripts to get things working and then figure out your interrupts.
I mean, it was all incremental because later it helped me figure out how to get Quake working right because it finally had a mouse look, and that wasn't built into anything. You had to like write scripts to make your mouse work.
Oh yeah, and then you had to go into the INI and add a bunch of additional entries. Okay, now it works. And you didn't think about it. You were it didn't even seem like you were doing anything important. You just wanted the freaking game to work the way you wanted it to, and you would do anything to just get it. Like so, when you move the mouse, it would move.
Yeah, I think VR is the next, at least one of the next stages of what we're talking about. It can be. I mean, there's a lot of questions about physicality and eyes and development there too. But like at some point, it's incredibly revealing for somebody who's artistically inclined to get into tilt brush and a Vive and suddenly have this incredible virtual painting experience where anything is possible. It just makes their minds like go into overdrive.
I will be. So, is your daughter going to be into that, or your son?
Yeah, both of them are kind of. Nick's really into 3D modeling. My daughter's really into art and animation, and
I'm wondering if there will be literally a synergy or of dovetailing of traditional sculpture and traditional painting in a virtual world where like your daughter comes out and says, "Okay, I want to try my hand at modeling clay," or something where it's it branches out into different disciplines that they might have not considered or
that's
appreciated.
really interesting for you to ask. She started out on of course, paper and pens and stuff like that, and then for a long time used an old iPad to draw a lot on, and that was really where she worked out a lot of her style stuff. And now she's got an old Wacom that I let her use, but she's completely gone like old school. She's buying canvases. In fact, I think she bought.
Wow.
She does oils and she does watercolor, and she's starting to mess around with acrylic. Like, she's way into how does the old stuff go, whereas I'm like, I was raised on the old stuff and really prefer my digital world, and she's going the other direction, appreciating the older stuff. So
because it's new to her, right? And it was never new; it was old to you. So that's really interesting.
It's easy to say, you hipster, but it's not. Right. It's something else. It's I don't know. It's getting back to the root.
There is a curiosity about that. I mean, I had the same thing. It's why I used to take her even when we moved into digital audio and video. I still wanted to know how things worked before, like why you plug 5 different wires from one deck to another. I mean, there's a great documentary called Wires or whatever that explores the history of electronic music, but not like digital synthesizers, but like old Moogs,
Moogs and stuff. Yeah.
And you literally just running patch cord from one thing to another to get an effect, and like people reaching back out to it because they at least the people in the documentary say like you get a better understanding of why things are done that way. Like even in a digital space where you can just pipe things in another, the tactile feedback is like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like
it's funny. One of the things that I'm so jealous of kids these days because I typed up my own daily newspaper in 6th grade. I self-published a yearbook. Our elementary school didn't have yearbooks, but I made a yearbook for our 6th grade class, and I can't imagine what I would have done if I'd had the web. Right? And if I had desktop publishing software. But even when I got older and I was making like a newsletter for our fantasy baseball league and I had a printer and I had a computer, I still went and I typed up the newsletter because it looked better. And I liked the control that I had over layout. And of course, when PageMaker came out later, I was super excited, like, oh my gosh, that's doing a lot of the things that I could do on paper. But even when I was able to take advantage of digital tools, there were still things I couldn't do with it yet. And I tie that back into what you were saying, Roger, because there is always that tactile feedback that we have yet to mimic digitally yet, where it's just sometimes easier, it's more scannable, you are able to get more input and a better feel for something because you're able to touch it and manipulate.
I can't draw on a tablet worth crap, but I can draw fine on a sheet of paper and a number 2 pencil or a drafting pencil because my background is in drafting.
I can't draw on a tablet worth crap, but I also can't draw on anything worth crap.
Except the zeros, that's all that matters.
It took a while for me to get used to it. I went through a bunch of nibs too. I finally found some for my Wacom that have the drag of a.
Really?
Yeah, it's great.
If you could email that to me, because that's the one thing I really kind of like. I don't have that resistance, and so my arm overcompensates everywhere, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's weird at first to get used to the smooth way, and then when I found these, I've gone back to feeling like paper, and now it's hard for me to go with the smooth one again. So, but yeah, I'll send you. They're just Wacom extra nibs. You can buy them in these different types and styles. And
oh, nice.
So.
Yeah, I just got the whatever 6 or 5 replacements that they pack in with the tablet. I have a belief that limitations, and this is the thing that goes back to probably why your daughter's so fascinated. Having defined limitations of what you can actually do with the medium in many ways makes you more creative, because now you're thinking, well, I can't do it this way anymore. How can I do whatever I want to do with this technology to get as close to what I want done, without the benefit of just being able to click and copy and paste or something to it. I think there's a there's a fascination of, okay, what other ways can I do to make sound with an 8 key keyboard versus like your standard 88 key keyboard. Wait,
Yeah,
is it 88 keys?
Yeah, is it 88? I don't even know what it is.
I don't remember.
104 keys for the big one, right?
I took my piano lessons from a nun, so I wasn't really too enthused. Sister Teresa, that was her name, Sister
Really?
Teresa.
Wow.
Sister Teresa was no Mother Teresa, though.
No, she didn't feed a bunch of people or whatever. I've really been reductive about Mother Teresa suddenly. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, right. Where'd that come
She
from?
fed a bunch of people, right? That was her deal? Okay.
Yeah, whatever, man. Saint. Well, that's it for this stream. Thanks everybody for watching, listening, enjoying, hating,
Living.
dying, loving, eating, praying, loving. Yeah, that's all. That's all. I don't know. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Bye, everybody.